Hello and welcome to our first programming tutorial. We'll be going over a language called Python. I refer to it as the plug-in and go of all languages. Yes, I coined that. You're welcome. In order to install Python, you're going to need to go to python.org. After that you're there, go over to downloads. Don't select downloads. I made that mistake when I was first doing it and I was really confused. Instead you want to go over and select your operating system. If you're doing Windows, just hover over and select that. But if you're doing something like Mac, simply select on that. Latest Python 3 release. If it's still in Python 3, it's pretty close to the end of that. You want to scroll all the way to the bottom. And then you want to do whatever installer that you prefer, but I imagine since you're using a Mac OS, it's going to be something around a Mac OS 64-bit Intel installer. Once it's successfully installed the installer, you want to click on the installer. Now just for you guys, I uninstalled the entirety of my Python, so that was a while, but here we are. Next you want to click on Customize Installation after clicking Add Python 3.9 to PATH. What that does is it allows you to use the command prompt to access Python. And that's very useful when you want to use external modules, so make sure to click that. Then you want to click on Customize Installation. Make sure all of these are checked as they are right now. Then I'm going to just do everything. You don't have to do install for all users and then press install. After the install is completed, it should go to this page and I just press close and it's done. Now what you want to do is you want to open your text editor of choice. In this example, I'm going to be using Notepad since it's simple and it's all we need. Excuse my dog in the background. She's snoring downstairs and she's like 300 pounds, so it doesn't work very well with the floors. So yeah, if you hear any rumbling, that's her. Okay, maybe not 300 pounds, but she's heavy, heavier than me. So this is going to be where you're going to write your first lines of code. And well, I guess it would be line. What you're going to want to do is just type in print, left parentheses, and then quotations, whatever you want to write, but I usually do hello world because it's substantial. And then another quotation to end the first, and then another parentheses, but the inverse of the left one, which is the right parentheses. And then you want to save that. For some of you, you're going to get a prompt to where you're going to save it. Try to go for desktop, at least that's what I would do because it's easy to find. Then you can move it to a subfolder later. What you're going to do is you're going to put it in somewhere where you can find it and just double click it. Now that you have this made, go to your Explorer and go to wherever you had that Python example and just double click it. Now it's just gonna flash, and I want you to think about why this is. We only want one line of code, and that was just to show the words hello world, at least for me. So why did it just flash? Was there a crash? What happened? What happened was that it simply print the hello world, didn't pause the execution, because pausing the execution when it's done seems kind of counterintuitive. You want to free up that space for other programs. So what it did is it just print hello world and quit. In order to stop it quitting, we're going to need to give the user a prompt to ask the user if he's done using this program. And we'll do that through the input prompt. Now technically I'm not supposed to be using the word prompt, I should be using function, but we'll get into that later. In order to use the input, we have to type in the word input, left parentheses, and then right parentheses. When I say left, I mean it's curving outward. I think that makes sense. Basically, the apogee of it is facing to the left. But you want to just type in input and nothing in between the parentheses. Then we want to go to our Explorer and then double click it again. Oh, I didn't save. It didn't do anything for me. So I'm going to move to another window, and that's going to be the command prompt. If you know how to use a terminal or command prompt, good for you. But for those of you who don't, just double click it and it should show you the same thing. It's not going to show the Python examples thing. What was this called? Example.py. Okay. And you see here, it's printing hello world. And then when I press enter, which is the input prompt, it will close the program. So there you go. So I know terminal, or the black box that just shows the output, is very intimidating. It was at first for me. Just look at it as pictureless interface, or there's nothing to see, but it all works in words. I'm going to break this down to its basic levels. So when you're writing a program, you're going to need data, operations, and a way to define how operations are separated. So for example, this is a keyword. Print is a keyword. What is a keyword? Well, a keyword is a reserved piece of information that the computer uses to understand what you're about to do. So print, and then parentheses. Why did we have to put something in these parentheses compared to the input where we had nothing? Well, what we're putting in here is a parameter to this function. Just as f of x in equation, I'm not good with math, okay? I never liked algebra, but, well, I don't like algebra. I'm still in algebra 2, but this is a parameter, this entire thing. The quotations tell the computer that this is going to be a word, not a number, not a true or false, which we'll get into in a little bit. This is a word, or a string of characters. Or what a character is just a single non-number digit. So that would be like A, B, C, D, E, F, G to Z. You can also have numbers stored as characters, but you wouldn't be able to add those numbers. Okay, so we understand that hello world is a parameter, and the way that how does the computer know that it's going to be a parameter rather than another operation? Well, the quotations here don't actually do much. It just tells the computer that anything in between them is going to be a word. The parentheses show what's the operation is. So print needs to have a way to separate the information it's going to print with the next piece of operations. So if we didn't have these here, let's see what would happen then. So I'm going to go to Python console, or that's what I'm using it. Clear the screen, example, Python example.py. Our first error, syntax error. Missing parentheses and call print. Do you mean to print hello world? And you'll see, or you'll notice, it's telling us that we are missing parentheses. Now, why would it need parentheses? Can it understand that that's what I'm trying to do? Because it seems to be that the new line is the separation between operations. Well, you'd be right if methods didn't exist, and we'll get into those in a while, but for now, just imagine it as you could have multiple operations on one line, and the reason why you need parentheses is to distinguish between an operation and a piece of data. So let's put these parentheses back. If you guys want me to get a key camera on, I can, just so you guys can see the keybinds that I use, because there's some very interesting ones that are very useful. But anyway, how do we distinguish between different operations on separate lines? So you can see here I pressed enter. It doesn't matter how many times you could, it's going to have the same output. So let's go ahead and go here and show you how that works. It's going to have the same output. We put like a few 6 lines in between this, and it's having the same output. That's called a good programming language, or basics of one. They're actually parsing. Parsing means the ability to define what the difference is between a blank space. Well, no, ignore what I just said about parsing because I don't have much language experience, but basically, it can tell what's an operation and what is just white space. Let's say we wanted to add a number. Well, you'd imagine that any programming language should be able to add numbers. So let's just do that and see what happens. There is nothing. Why is there nothing? I suppose we can try and put a print here and see what happens then. Oh, 3, and that's 1 plus 2. So why didn't it show up before? Well, here's something interesting with programming languages. Unless you have a debugger, you can't see the exact output of the current operation you just did. So you need to pass or put it into a print statement. And what a print statement does is it tells the computer to show exactly what it is. And this was the operation for 1 plus 2. And that resulted in 3 right there. And it's going to ask for the prompt, which we'll press enter, and it will end the program. So you understand operations and why things need to be the way that they are, kind of. Let's try and do a 1 as a string plus 2 this time, just to see how it is. Oh, can only concatenate. What does concatenate mean? Okay, well maybe we just did it in the wrong order. 2 plus the string of 1, yeah. Let's try this. Unsupported operand types, what defines type in this sense? Integer versus string. So like I was saying, this is a type, a data type to be precise. 1 with the quotations is referred to as a string, and that's the data type string. But something without parentheses, that's an integer value, that's just an integer. So imagine trying to add the word hello plus 2. It's not going to work. Of course, you could just, well, the computer could just assume that you're meaning 2 plus the length of hello. But what if it's not what you meant? So instead it just throws an error and says, hey, I can't add numbers with words. And that's how that works. In order to get rid of this problem, although, there is a semi-simple solution. We're going to use the function int, which stands for integer. And if you pass another data type, it will imply that you want to convert that data type into the integer type. So if we try and convert 1 with a string of 1 into an integer using this, where our parentheses indicate the separation of values, or operations, I should say. So what you're doing right now is printing 2 plus the integer of the string of 1. It's a mouthful. But what that should come out to be is 3. So let's see it. Oh, I didn't save. I'm smart. Just not specifically. Yeah. Sarcasm. And hey, it comes out to be 3. So why would you ever, in your right mind, decide to just randomly convert a string into an integer rather than just doing the 1? You'll have to get into inputs to get to that. But I want to go over a few more fundamentals first. So let's go ahead and test this all a little bit more. Can we do the same thing with strings? Can we add maybe man of age plus 2? Let's try it. Oh wait, maybe not. I told you not to add numbers with words, and that's exactly what we're doing here. So how do we tell the computer, hey, this is a word? Well, the same way that we converted the string of 1, and tried to add it to 2, we can do the exact same thing with 2. So age of man equals, and then we're going to do string, which is str in Python, of 2. And what that does is it converts the number of 2 into a string, and it's going to join it with this. And what's interesting is that we can do the exact same thing with a number, a regular number, but that's a string. So if we just wanted to do that, we could do that. Or if you knew it was going to be a 2 all along, you just remove those. But in most cases, you won't. At least you wouldn't use that method. So let's do that because it had the error the first time we tried doing this. Unsupported operand type, or cannot concatenate the string to the integer. Let's go ahead and do this. Age of a man is 2. 18 specifically, but I don't care. I was just kind of writing gibberish. But the string of 2 plus the string of age of a man equals, and then it's getting input, of course. So that's basic operation of how this all functions when it comes to string and number concatenation. Concatenation, when it's talking about strings, is simply appending, adding, whatever you want to call it, smashing on top of. It's appending data to another set of data. So just as this is a string of characters, it is converting this 2 into a string of characters and then combining the string of characters to be age of a man equals 2. Now let's get into variables. Well, what is a variable? In order for a computer to store data, it needs to call it something. And what a variable is a temporary method of storing, editing, any kind of operation on data. Now, why don't we just keep it as this? Well, you're going to want to have some mass way to call something, or you're going to want a way to manipulate it through multiple lines. So let's go ahead and try it. Let's make a variable and call it Joe. And we're going to set his value to be Joe. String of Joe, Joe equals Joe. Joe with a lowercase j equals Joe. Now, what are we doing here? So we are creating our own keyword, and it's going to be called JOE. No, nothing special. And then we're going to be putting data, or assigning this data, or binding this data to be Joe. Another way you can picture it is you have a bag of data, and that bag of data has nothing in it, but it's labeled as JOE. Then we're going to put a string of characters called capital JOE inside of Joe. And now we can call that data later in the print statement. We're going to just do the same format as last time. Input is last, print is last. So what is this going to do? So let's just imagine Joe is equivalent to capital JOE, and then we're putting it inside of this bag. What print does is it takes what's inside of that bag, specifically Joe in this case, and it's going to show whatever's in that bag. So let's go ahead and test this. So now let's go to Python console, and hey, it shows Joe. So that's exactly what we expected, because Joe's bound to the data, which is called Joe. Let's do a little bit more elaborate example, because I don't think having a variable name that's the same as its data is exactly the smartest. So I'll show you in another way. So based on what we know, this is going to be the variable name, and whatever comes right of the operand, or in this case, it's going to be the equal sign. It's going to be whatever we're assigning the value of this variable to. So Samuel is going to be the data of this bag of data, and then we're going to print the bag of data. Why doesn't it just print the bag of data as the name? For example, we're passing in bag of data as the piece of data that we can visually see inside the code. So why isn't it just printing bag of data? Because of the lack of quotation marks. So what the quotation marks do is it tells it that this is direct data. We just want to print that specifically. But if we remove these quotations, it's going to go ahead and see, oh, this is a reserved keyword. Let's go to wherever that keyword is instantiated or started or valued, and see what value it is. And we see here, so the computer goes and it looks, okay, we're printing something here. Oh, piece of data. Oh, this piece of data, Samuel, was assigned to this variable, bag of data. Another thing to note is you can actually do operations So let's just do that, and I'll show you. It will do bag of data is equivalent to Samuel plus cooled. Now, in some cases, you're going to want parentheses, but usually you don't. Why? Well, although it's an operation, it's not a function. And what a function is its own thing. Now, this, you might argue, this is its own thing. I suppose you could say that, although it's data that's being directly manipulated. So all it's doing is simply saying Samuel plus cooled with the space before it, because hey, you have to realize these are their own separate strings of characters, and there's no space after Samuel, so that means that if we wanted to have a space before the next word, we're gonna have to put a space in the next, or first, right here, or right here. And then we're gonna print the bag of data. So since this is gonna be its own thing, it should print it as what it is, or the result of Samuel plus cooled. So let's show this. Samuel cooled. It works. Sweet. It's even now, it's still satisfying to see the smallest things just work together and actually understand it. And that's kind of one of the reasons why I really like to program. It's just you made something. But I don't know. So yeah, there you go. That's how variables work in most senses. Now, something to note. Operations vary from variable to variable. For example, if we wanted to convert a string to an integer, we would be telling the computer to, hey, this is an integer, we want you to turn it into a string. And the computer would say, oh, okay. But if we tried to convert an integer into an integer, it would be doing nothing. And the computer knows that, which is really interesting. It's kind of a cool awareness the computer can infer not to do things. So let's see that in action. So let's just do int of 5. And that's not going to change the result. It's going to print 5. So I'll show that here. Oh, I didn't save it. Yeah, once again. If you double click that, it'll just show 5. Because we're not changing much in the code. So let's go back to the notepad. We got 5 here. Let's try and change that to this. And let's show that. It's going to show the same thing because we're converting an integer of 5, integer of the string of 5, into an integer. That didn't make sense. We're printing the integer result of the string of 5. Realizing now I didn't make an outro to this recording, so we're just gonna roll with it, and thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed. We'll probably do more of this at some point, but for now, just sit tight, and if you liked it, make sure to tell me because, yeah, I don't know if I did a good job. Anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed.